live stream. And we're going there. And we're moving along. Finally. It's been quite a morning. We will be going on screen here in just a few minutes. If you are tuning in right now, hold tight. We will be live very soon. It looks like our internet's moving fine. Nothing is slow. We're still chilling. Live very soon. It sounded a little echoey, as I just heard, but I will be back near the mic in just a minute. Just sharing the link out to people saying that we are about to go live. Or I guess we are live. You're hearing me right now, huh? But like that. Come on, Bella. You coming in here? Hanging out for a bit? Let's hang out for a bit, Bella. Come on. Bringing the dog in. Popping on the computer. No way. Bella. Really? That's not good. No, come here. All right, we're about to go here. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Combot Collective. Bring everything you want to know from the world of robot combat, from the heavyweight class to the flyweight class, from battle boss to the live circuit. This stream has moved times a couple of times, so I do apologize, but we're live now and we are here. I'm your host, Sterling Brown, here today. Very tired. It's been quite a day already. As you know, we were going to do the NHRL post-show stream after NHRL ended, just after NHRL ended, but unfortunately, it ended early. I'll give NHRL its credit. I guess it's not very unfortunate. It's good that they got a stream to not end in the wee hours of the night. It was only 9:37 when NHRL cut off their stream and we had all our champions. And as cool as that was, I was at a family get-together. We were watching WWE Backlash with some family and friends on the patio. It was a good time, but you know, we were watching wrestling and then hanging out until about 11:30. I thought that's about around when NHRL would end, so I had the notes ready, but there was such a disconnect from when the show ended, from when their stream ended, and from when my stream would have started. I was like, I think it'd be better for everyone because it's so late now and it's been so far apart from when the stream actually ended to just do it as a morning show. So I announced at 8 a.m., 8:30 a.m., the same time the pre-show stream would start, we would go ahead and do the post-show then. And then as I was getting ready to do it, I get a fucking call from work asking me where I was. I thought I was off today. I'm not. Apparently I worked at 8 a.m. So that was awesome. Not. But I went in, did my hours, and I'm back home now, and we're finally gonna talk about some NHRL. It won't be the longest stream. We're ready to move on to the next bit of events. We're ready to move on to the second half of BattleBots round of 32 and all that good stuff. Hopefully by the time that is happening, we're gonna have Robot Combat Tonight episode 6 and a BattleBots Proving Ground video out for you guys. We'll just have to see how that goes, but I hope you're all doing great today on this May 7th that we're out here. Doesn't look like we have anybody in the chat just yet, but let me go ahead and go to our classic overlay here. Looks like everything's already set up. And let's go ahead and switch over to some NHRL. Actually, you know what? Let's not switch over to highlights because that's just going to get messy and ugly. You guys know what we're talking about here. Let's see what we got. Move it over to... You guys know what we saw, at least, I should say. My apologies. Let's go ahead and move over to the bracket. We aren't going to look too deep at it, but, you know, just to give you all something to look at while I discuss what happened where with this crazy tournament. Very fun event. Shout out to all the horizontal spinners that finished well at this event. If you're a fan of horizontal spinners, and my buddy, co-host Mantine actually is, big horizontal spinner guy. He was very stoked about this result. Both the 3-pounders in the 3-pound finals, horizontal spinners. One of the two vertical spinners in the 12-pound finals, and the winner of the 12-pound finals, a horizontal spinner. And both of the robots in our 30-pound finals, undercutters, undercutter versus undercutter action. It was a lot of very, very promising stuff that we saw from some horizontal spinning robots. Shows that they do have a shot somewhere else. Maybe we should get rid of that shelf tray, but I digress. Let's go ahead and before we jump into, because what I do for these live streams where I'm watching an event live and I don't know how robots place is I take 10 robots from each class that I highlight beforehand to write about and make notes of. So some robots do miss my field of view in terms of who I wish to cover, but some don't. Obviously, there's some of the robots that we talked about during Robot Combat Tonight on the 5th are the ones I have written down here. You know, the likes of Blackbird, Eruption, Wormhole, Spartan coming out of the 3-pound class. Machines like Fracas, Little Rip, Kitchen Grill coming out of the 30-pound class, that kind of ballpark. But before we get to that, let's talk about some of the fun storylines that came out of this 30-pound division. Not even the whole May 6th event, 3-pound, 12-pound, 30-pound division. I have some talking points here. One of the big ones, saving for last. But first thing we talk about, we got a lot of good news, some bad news that we learned in the pre-show stream. Hotshot pulled out of the event, sadly. That was one of my 30-pounders to look out for. That was a robot that we talked about a good bit on Robot Combat tonight. Doesn't look like they had much intention to actually show up today. I guess Austin McCord got a little bit busy. Maybe something around that kind of ballpark. But yeah, no Hotshot in this event, sadly. We want to see this robot burn machines to a crisp like we know it can. Like that poor robot it faced, Warlock, I believe the name was, in the March event. We want to see more of that. That was fun. But there was no Hotshot, sadly. One robot I did highlight that was there, only for one fight, but was there, was Helicobopter Chopper. That's right. Everyone else was butchering the name, but I got it because I've said it so many damn times already. Helicobopter Chopper, very impressive young team. I am so jealous. I wish I could have done this roboteering stuff at their age because they're so good at it. Helicobopter Chopper was captained by an 8-year-old and a 13-year-old. The 18-year-old, I'm sorry, 8-year-old and 13-year-old. The 8-year-old drove the mini-bot, which was this cute little duct tape box on wheels that had eyes on it. And then Helicobopter Chopper itself was driven by the 13-year-old. Team Helicobopter Chopper, the full name of the group, had a nice interview to start the stream off in early parts of the day. And they did make it into the round of 120, so I guess maybe they did win some fights in the qualifiers. Went out really quickly once we got to the bracket stages, sadly, but they put up the best Mauler dance in the tournament on the way out. We saw Shred Raider do a really good Mauler dance in 2022. Well, here's another really good one here. Very fun stuff by the boys from Helicobopter Chopper. Hopefully we can see them appear during the June NHRL event. Moving on forward here, what are some other fun things to talk about? International Flair. International Flair is always a big thing for me. You know, I love seeing a bunch of flags being waved around at these Robot Combat events. Well, this might have been the most International Flair-orific. I don't think that's a word, but it is now. Events that NHRL has hosted. We've seen the United States, we've seen England, and we've seen Brazil and the Bahamas, of course, 4 nations which were represented here today at NHRL, or yesterday NHRL, I should say. My apologies. But for the first time ever, we also saw Puerto Rico and Ireland, good old Ireland, represented here today. Ireland had Kitchen Grill, a robot which we will be talking about later on in the stream. Puerto Rico had Arsenal, a robot which I won't be covering. I didn't know this team was competing. Coming from the same team, or I should say the offshoot, the spiritual successor from the team which brought us, I want to say it was Aquiles or AMIDST or some machine. They brought it up during the interview for the Puerto Rican team during while they were being talked to in the pits. This team has fought in the past at BattleBots IQ, has had much success at those events. Artemis looked pretty good, or I should say Arsenal looked pretty good in the 12-pound class, but they did fall to one of those powerful team defective vertical spinners later on into the bracket, so they did not qualify, unfortunately. Big buzz for San Juan, Puerto Rico, all those beautiful cities in that nation yesterday with Backlash happening, Arsenal competing in the USA. A lot of fun stuff happening on the island over there. And speaking of international robots, as we heard at the start of the event, Team AGVS, who received, I believe, some sort of Founders Award by NHRL the day prior to the event actually starting, that was really cool. Apparently, this may be Team AGVS's only chance to qualify for the NHRL finals this year, according to the team. They're super busy this year in terms of robot combat stuff and personal commitments. Maybe they will be able to appear, somewhere in the September event later on in the year when we're having our final countdown, our final push to the finals. But as we'll see when we start talking about notable robots here on this field, none of the AGVS robots qualified. Panic situations busting out in Brazil. One robot did qualify. And you know what? Let's go ahead and talk about it right now because this is quite frankly story of the event. To quote Shaquille O'Neal, I apologize for not recognizing your game because, oh my God. Who recognized the game here? The Brazilians in the chat for YouTube. Because non-stop, it was an endless stream of Chibata, rato, borrachato, hashtag Chibata, Brazil, and I love it. There were some people in the NHRL Discord that were hating it, how about you cry about it? Because, I mean, this is what Robot Combat is. A international spectacle. I loved it. And for a big YouTube influencer, a star in Brazil, to bring this kind of attention and eyesight to NHRL streams, to the sport of Robot Combat, to the sport in Brazil, I love it. This guy hosts Street Bots. He's doing a web series in Brazil that has some impressive production quality. As I mentioned on yesterday's stream, my buddy Carlos in Brazil brought it up to me. I didn't write Chibata, his robot, a two-wheel drive horizontal spinner, which has won Street Bots events in the past in Brazil. I didn't bring up that I didn't put him on my notables because I didn't know what this robot really was. I didn't realize that this was Rato Borrachuro. I probably butchered his name there. I'll just call him Robo-Rat because that's what it translates to in English. I didn't have him written down in my notables group for the 30-pound class because I've never heard of the robot before this. And it was a mistake on my part. This robot, I don't know what it did beforehand. I believe it did have some successful fights in the qualifiers, forfeited its way through the round of 16 in the tournament. My apologies, forgot what the word was. I only say it so much. And then in the round of 8 against Little Ripperoni, the original Ripperoni, Little Rip, winner got a guaranteed spot into the NHRL finals. Big upset here. It wasn't even close, to be honest. Shibata tore up Ripperoni, pulled off a big, I don't want to say it was a knockout win or a judge's decision win. I want to say it was a tap out, but I might be incorrect by that. There were so many fights to remember yesterday. But with that performance, Shibata, Rato, the robot is qualified for the NHRL finals, and this superstar in Brazil is going to be back in November. NHRL might need to add an entire extra set of bleachers in the House of Havoc for this guy, because I have to imagine some Brazilian fans are going to show up in force, make the trip across the pond to compete show their support to Shibata and Robo-Rat at the upcoming event. I'm so excited to see these guys. You know what I want to see? I want to see 30-pound Cornell robot fight Shibata, because that would probably be the loudest fight in NHRL history if something like that happens in November. It would be utterly electric, and I would love it. But talking about some of the more fun stuff, well, obviously that is really fun, seeing such a superstar celebrity online bring some buzz to Robot Combat. But what else happened here? Some hijinks in Norwalk. There was a fucking clown in the pits driving a 3-pound drum bot. I want to say it was Faith Fan. I might be incorrect. Mother of one of the school teams competing at this event. Showed up in a full clown getup. I guess she has some experience being a clown, because she had like the big violet name on there. She had the clown suspenders, the big old red nose, the colorful hair, all that stuff. Apparently she was making balloon animals for kids and builders in the back. What is there not to love? She even had a little bubble gun. It was sick. I feel bad for everyone that's afraid of clowns. Friend of the Combot Collective, former guest here, Luke Stengel, was mortified by the presence of the clown. But that team wasn't clowning around. They had some solid success during the event itself. And talking about fun robots, one more storyline I want to talk about here. Shout outs to Positively Hysterical. Big glow up in this event. Trans rights colors were represented. They had a brutal bouquet as the weapon this time around that they just swung up and down, hitting opponents left and right. 2 computer mouse mini bots, and in fact, one of their computer mouse mini bots became a full 3-pounder for itself. Had a spinning mace flail on the back, undercutter on the front. Looked okay despite going 0-2. But perhaps the most impressive thing from Tom Farkas and Positively Hysterical is that this robot's won a fight this time. I was so stoked. It fought the traditional 2-wheel drive vertical spinner Molten, and no weapon working on Molten during the entire fight. It was a very slow, sluggish fight, but Molten's drive wasn't working very well, which allowed that bouquet of pain to just get slammed on the top of Molten quite a few times, especially near the end of the fight. They won via judge's decision. I'm sure it was their only victory, but still, shouts to Positively Hysterical. Big victory there. And speaking of these 3-pounders, easy transition here. Let's move over and talk about the robots I listed as notables from the 3-pound class. for this event. An event won by a robot which we haven't seen in 3 years. Isn't that something special? Let's talk about these robots, though. We'll go ahead and start with, hey, you got to start with them here at NHRL. You got to start with them here at TCC. One of the true favorites here at the Combot Collective. And while they are on my mind, we got to do it here at TCC. Not that. There we go. This is the Combot Collective, and we are brought to you by robotsruinmylife.com. They are the merchandise provider for numerous robots, which we have seen this week on BattleBots and on Norwalk Havoc. You got your robots such as Jack Rabbit, Shred It Bro, Blackbird, Star Child, Wake and Bake. These fun robots from Team Shred It and Omega Team. Marathon, Ripperoni, Lil Rip, robots like that. They have merchandise on robotsruinmylife.com, so you can represent some of the small robots in the world. But if you want to keep it mainstream and you want to represent the BattleBots in our community, well, check it out here. Shred It Bro, Star Child, Ripperoni, all work with Robots Ruin My Life. And they got plenty of merchandise there. If you want to get your Ripperoni or Star Child or Shred It Bro poker chips, they have them. If you want to get a Ripperoni pizza box, they have them. If you want to get a Ripperoni or Star Child shirt, they have them in multiple styles and colors. Maybe even a jacket, mix it in there as well. Get a tote bag with the Robots Ruin My Life logo on it. You see it all on screen right now. Plenty of goodies to choose from. They are the sponsor for the Combot Collective in terms of our giveaways, and you can expect another giveaway loading up here pretty soon for the Combot Collective. Trying to give our bracketology giveaway a bit of breathing room. By the way, everyone who signed up for that brackets competition for the round of 32, thank you so much. We got, I want to say 20 people signed up for it with their own bold picks. Some very fun choices as to who won. None of them were Riptide, which makes it even better. But yes, check out robotsruinmylife.com. It's in the description below. But now let's go ahead and go back to our main page here. Look at my beautiful face once again and talk about Blackbird. Shouts to Robots Ruin My Life. This robot had a great showing in April of 2022. It is a multi-time NHRL finalist. As I mentioned, Tony D'Ambrosio, a supporter of the Combot Collective. Only new change for Blackbird looked to be the mini-bot for Blackbird. It was in a slightly different shape. And in Blackbird's first fight versus the 3-pound depth charge clone, Steel Mountain, it was a good bit of back and forth. This was a fun qualifier fight here. But the big hits and all the control, it really came from Blackbird, allowing it to gain a tap-out win at the very end of the matchup. And as Blackbird now moved on to the bracket stage, didn't make it too far, unfortunately, but in Tony D'Ambrosio's first bracket fight, it was versus a dozen bolts. And a dozen bolts may have been thrown out in this one. It was a very impressive judging decision for Blackbird. Probably their most impressive fight on the weekend. But then it became Omega Team versus Team WPI, Polywog versus Blackbird, 2 NHRL All-Stars here. Winner would face Caldera, a robot which Blackbird has beaten in the past, going back to the April event. This was probably one of the most tactical fights of the entire event. One I certainly implore you to check out. I'm going to say that for a few fights, but this is one I'd definitely be checking out if I was you and I missed the event. A serious spectacle of driving skill and patience for Polywog and Blackbird here, but the WPI robot would sadly take the W. Moving on, while our boy Blackbird fell in the mid-rounds via a split judge's decision. Very unfortunate, but hopefully we can see Blackbird bounce back during the June events. That will be their third appearance this year. I got to wish Tony D'Ambrosio the best of luck. We want to see that robot in the finals. Another robot we want to see in the finals with a bit of Omega Team connection to itself is Inside Job. This is the first appearance from Team Flight Plan this year, like we mentioned in the morning stream. And just like last year when we saw Inside Job have such a great run in July, Brandon Zielinski mans the crusher while Captain Joe Fabiani runs the drive. It was a favorite to go deep into this bracket for everyone, it seemed like, except Joe Fabiani, who's not afraid to forfeit if it means getting sushi a little bit early. Thankfully, it didn't have to forfeit here. Had a pretty decent performance. First fight was against the impressive young Drumbot Scrambled, and within a couple of moments, Inside Job had Scrambled pinned down, and a perfect bite right into the top of Scrambled, potentially scrambling the insides. Inside Job drove Scrambled around the arena, but when the ref asked for an unstick, shades of Quantum versus Blacksmith here, Inside Job couldn't get out of the inside job. It could not unstick. This meant the fight had to be paused, but once they couldn't get them broken there either, it became a double knockout judge decision, one which Inside Job would easily win. And then in its first fight against Draft 1, Inside Job ate some stiff horizontal spinner strikes before they managed to get a good bite on the Draft 1. This team played it smart, unlike Scrambled. Tapped out pretty much the moment right before the big pinch happened. About the smartest thing you can do against a robot like Inside Job, who may be the second best crusher in the sport right now, as crazy as it is to say. This moved Inside Job to the round of 64 where it faced Naga. You got to be careful saying that name. You don't want to end up like a certain A's commentator. This robot was built by Team Ribot, Team WPI, and was hosted, a host drove it. It was driven by Outside the Box host Christine Giver. Got to give a little bit of love to my fellow content creator there. Hopefully they're listening into this. Back and forth affair with both robots suffering from drive woes towards the ends of the fight. But the podcast host would win this one and eliminate Inside Job from going too far into this bracket. Round of 64 exit for Inside Job. Can't imagine Joe Fabiani was too upset. That means he got to go eat sooner rather than later. Happy for him. A robot which I wrote down here but we didn't get to see too much of was Eruption. The NHRL July 2022 event winner, multi-time finalist, and number 3 ranked robot as it stood entering this event. It was a known Brazilian killer, as we saw in July versus Twin Beast, and in their first fight right here, they would beat a Loco on an untelevised unanimous judges decision. I believe they also beat Sombra at some point during this event as well, but I'm not too savvy on that. Like I mentioned, with so many fights happening in a 10-hour span, you forget some stuff. But in their next fight, they faced a very game ring spinner, Event Horizon, and this was one of the better fights of the weekend. Some people have even said that this was fight of the weekend. Solid robots here, but Eruption would come out on top, but only by a split judge decision. Great showing by Event Horizon. It's a shame the event wasn't double elimination anymore, because I think that was their only loss. Might be incorrect there, but I believe that was their only loss. We don't know the fate of Eruption, but apparently they did go out somewhere in the middle of the field here. Kickstart had to forfeit against Eruption. Oh, wait, no, that's what happened to Eruption. Eruption forfeited against Kickstart. I guess it's they're both WPI robots. Maybe they wanted Kickstart to go through since it's the newer robot. But Kickstart's already qualified for the finals, so I really don't know what the logic is behind that choice. Oh, well, you can't predict this sport sometime. Moving on forward here, a robot which we do know the result for. Polywog versus Caldera. It was one of the longest standing, talking about Polywog here, my apologies, one of the longest standing and most successful robots in NHRL's 3-pound history. Has a robot in the museum, shows how important it really is. A bit like a mini Ribot, as we mentioned in the past, with a drum and David Jim behind the sticks. This will be their first time fighting this year, surprisingly. I might be wrong about that. I don't think they appeared in March. I'm pretty sure it was their first time fighting this year. First fight of the day was an easy one. Would be against the Red Lifter bot Half-Life. An easy win and an easy start for the kinetic energy robot Polywog, who bullied the control bot for the full duration of the fight. Great durability by Half-Life, though. I know Luke Stenkel was a little bit critical of the robot's lifting ability, but it did have a couple of shining moments during the event. Made it decently far into the bracket for being a control bot. Polywog's first aired bracket fight, though, would be one against... Almost felt like it was looking in a mirror here, taking on Apex Predator, a fellow four-wheel drive black and neon green drum bot. Apex, another veteran in an NHRL, put up a very solid fight, but from what we saw, we did cut halfway through into this fight. David Jin dominated the final minute to take this one on a judge's decision. And they'd also take the next one on a judge's decision, a split judge's decision this time in the aforementioned Driving Spectacle versus Blackbird. Both robots kept it nearly perfect and even for the match's entirety, but Polywog just had a couple more significant strikes which threw robots into the roof. Took it forward here as it was then on to Caldera for Polywog, two mainstays at NHRL once again here. Inter-team rivals. This was a fantastic fight, but one which sadly Polywog would bow out against. Another close judge's decision here, but Caldera this was their weekend. You know, we saw every now and then a robot which performs really well, but never makes it too deep. has a weekend. I mean, that's what, Blackbird had in April 2022. That was their weekend. Chubby Unicorn last March. That was their weekend. Well, this was Caldero's weekend. They looked fantastic, but speaking of horizontal spinners, we got a couple right here. Let's talk about Wormhole. This was a robot I just had to highlight. We've seen this robot grow in front of our eyes in the past year, from defeating Axebots to getting burnt to a Chris versus mixtape to bouncing back big time in 2023, had a very solid showing at RoboGames. Kicked off pretty good here. It would reportedly win its first fight, which it did not air, I believe, at least on main NHRL streams. All these fights do air on Brett Vision if you want to check that out when you watch an NHRL stream live. But I can only write about so much. I did not look at Brett Vision at all during the stream. We did have, going back to Wormhole here, won its first fight, had some struggles in its first televised fight against Red Hawk X, a fight that we tuned halfway into. And as we tuned in, Wormhole was already down a weapon and half of its defensive forks, which means it could not do much against Red Hawk X. Lost the judge's decision here. And then in its first fight in the elimination bracket, so it did pick up probably another win somewhere there. We'd see it against Rick Roller, a traditional two-wheel drive drum bot, which lost its wheel and weapon pretty early against Wormhole. Big win for Wormhole there. But then Wormhole ended up fighting Canterbury off camera, and that would be a loss. So it's a bit of a shame. Not a lot of Wormhole's fights were televised, so we have a bit of an incomplete picture here. Tell you what, I love NHRL, and I get they got to make some compromises with so many robots in the field this year. But missing so much action, these NHRL events feel a little bit like Comedy Central BattleBots. You see a robot like Grim Ripper do really good in their first fight, and then you just don't see them again for the rest of the event. That's the way baseball go. One robot I was surprised to see in this event, I had to add her on my notables list last minute. I somehow missed it competing today. Spartan, coming from the Bahamas. I'm very excited to see this robot. Johnny Sampas of Team Malice fame. The guy's trying to make a heavyweight, an incredible looking heavyweight for that matter. Omni Drive, bar spinning nightmare, looks amazing. But Spartan was the robot to talk about today. As I mentioned, the only Bahamian robot in the world right now. Best known for its shocker knockout it picked up against Lynx back in April of 2022. NHRL, we keep jumping back to that event. It was a very good event. As I mentioned, first time fighting in 2023, and its first fight was a wild one, taking on Seems Reasonable Robotics' Tilt. Opening strike got their horizontal spinner tangled deeply into the floor, but Brett the Brick was able to break it open, and as soon as it was broken open, they broke open Tilt. One hit knockout to take Tilt out to move itself on to the round of 120, where it was to take on another wild horizontal spinner from Team Honeycracked, named Whirlwix, I believe is what the name was. Whirlwax, I'm sorry. Very much shades of Sidewinder from BattleBots 2019, except a two-wheel drive configuration. A very fun design, but this would be a very easy win for Spartan, as Whirlwax's weapon would not work. Pretty vile KO. Guts were hanging out of the robot and everything. It had a real challenge on deck next in Prom 3, who was having a little bit of a better showing than it did at NHRL March. Great fight here. Big chunk it's taken out of Prom Hada, though, and that allowed Spartan, who, despite the drive issues, to prevail in this one. Moving it forward, deeper into the brackets. I don't know exactly how far he got into the bracket. Took on, I believe... made it into the round of 32. That was a round of 32 fight. Round of 16, it would face Droopy. It had drive issues in the end of the Prom 3 fight, like I mentioned. Also had drive issues in the start of this matchup with Droopy, and these issues just pretty much allowed Spartan to not be able to capitalize at all for this entire event. Just big hits from both robots, but after dealing with the broken weapon and loose armor in the latter half of the fight, this would be Droopy's match to win. We'll be talking a lot about Droopy here later on because of obvious reasons. We'll be talking about them pretty soon here as we move over to more international robots. We go from Bahamas to Brazil, some killer bees there. A Loco, our first of two AVGS competitors we want to talk about here. Sabra was also in this class, but I did not have them listed. So first of 2 out of 3 to talk about here. Going off with a Loco, who was actually my pick to win this event today. Bit of a bummer there. Very compact drum bot, which stole the show versus Polywog back in April of 2022. Didn't have the best start. As we mentioned earlier, it lost a qualifier fight in a unanimous judges' decision versus Eruption, a robot which we did not see much, but this is a robot which is known to take out AGVS robots in the past. And despite this fumble, Aloco did manage to make its way into the tournament where it faced Espresso Shot in the first round. A control bot which only worked for half of the fight, got torn apart, but did have a very nice plow. Credit to them there. And then it took on another lifter in the aforementioned Half-Life in the following round. A judge's decision here, but another solid performance for Aloco. Sadly, the road, though, would stop during Aloco versus Synthesis, a 3-pound homage to NHRL 30-pound annual champion Emulsifier. And this one wasn't even close either. The brand new robot, the vertical spinner, won every single exchange and took this one home via tap out in less than a minute. Very, very impressive by Synthesis. Another robot I really did not recognize the game of, and I do apologize for that. Aloco would be the best placing 3-pounder of the Brazilian bunch, but it was still not enough to get this robot into the finals. Next up, Twin Beast, a robot which made the finals back in July, lost that aforementioned match against Eruption. We did not get to see this robot compete during the qualifiers, but it did manage to qualify. The first time we saw it compete was in a slugfest versus Whole Hog in the round of 128. A very short but very sweet fight, which ended in a tap out for the American Red Drumbot. This allowed Twin Beast to move on to take on Droopy in the round of 64. And now we go from Twin Beast to Droopy. Let's talk about Droopy. This was a fantastic fight. One of the best of the entire event, I would say. Another one that I implore you guys to check out. It was a close fight. Vertical versus horizontal. USA versus Brazil. Wheels versus gyro power. And gyro power, Brazil, horizontal. They'd come out on top here in this banger of a fight. Twin Beast would slow down more and more as the fight progressed, even though the drum was working pretty solid. And this allowed the old head and Droopy to move on forward here, as Droopy then next brought in the Smee Minibot, driven by Joe Fabiani himself, to take on a struggling Sea Dragon's Roar. Had an okay fight in its prior round, but definitely struggled here. Got an easy win, but then it moved on to that absolute war versus Spartan. As I mentioned, this was a fantastic fight. Great offense by both ends, but Spartan struggled later into the fight and took it here by judge's decision. The only piece of Spartan which really made big-time help for the Bahamian robot was the piece of armor, which caused a little bit of entanglement for Droopy. Ended up being more effective than the weapon itself, like I just mentioned, but it just wasn't enough for poor Spartan here. Was eliminated versus Droopy. The Gyrobot moved on to what I believe was a round of 8 now, taking on Chainsaw Kitty, a real breakout robot this year. A few brutal strikes from Chainsaw Kitty at first, but the high set vert on Chainsaw Kitty was just food for a robot like Droopy here. Strike after strike after strike. It was enough to put Chainsaw Kitty down for a cat nap with 23 seconds to go. And this moved on Droopy to the finals for November. Very exciting there. But also put them into the semifinals where they faced a where they get from one traditional four-wheel drive vertical spinner to a different four-wheel drive vertical spinner. Of course, Chainsaw Kitty, a bit more like your Death Rolls and Witch Doctors in the world. Synthesis was literally built to be based off the likes of Emulsifier and Aftershock. And this new and up-and-coming vert Synthesis looked great this year. It qualified for the NHRL finals, but it got taken down just as easily as Chainsaw Kitty did due to the same issues, pretty much. The vert looked to be unstoppable up to this point, but just the range and the power which Droopy has, factoring in the weight too, those double 1-pound blades, there was nothing Synthesis could do, and it was on to the NHRL finals and the event finals, the May event finals for Droopy. Who will be their opponent? We already talked about them quite a bit. In Caldera from Glenn Voxel, a longtime competitor in the 3-pound class, a multi-time NHRL finalist, one of the most effective mini-bots in the field, also being flanked alongside the main robot Caldera. And felt almost like a classic mode storyline here for Caldera here. A lot of old school competitors that this robot had to face, being an old school name itself. Its first opponent was a longtime competitor coming from my buddy Badnick, my buddy Dylan, my apologies. Voice is already running out of gas. We got 12-pound and 30-pound to talk about here. It took on Nitro Hornet to kick the event off. Absolutely bombastic fight for these two to kick off their week. Massive strikes from both ends, both robots flying violently into the Lexan wall, but Caldera survives here. Dylan had to tap out. He didn't seem too pleased by it, but Nitro Hornet did fall. And the Minibot and Caldera both survive here. Very impressive as I hear some thunder rolling in. I hope I finish this stream before it starts raining. I'm going to go hang out in the rain, get some good water in my hair, what's left of it at least. But from one longtime competitor, Caldera moved to what was probably the oldest competitor in the field here. Mondo Bizarro, robot which we saw turn some heads at Robo Games. You know, Ricky Williams brought up a very good stat here, and it's a shocking one. A lot of very young builders competing in this field today. You know, Drew Davis's students, Helicobacter Chopper, of course. Team Sus, that's another fun one. Some other very young schools, middle schools, high schools competing. Mondo Bizarro, who started fighting around 2010, 2011, 2012, is older than a lot of kids in this field. The robot itself, that's absolutely mental. I love Mondo Bizarro. I hope this robot never retires. It's like the VDD of this era. It just shows up to everything and refuses to not. Unfortunately, it would get outmatched here by the slightly newer robot. De-wheeled and knocked out by Caldera. It moved on here to a third straight drum bot, and a much newer one at that, and Power Surge, who swooped a robot in quite volatile fashion earlier on in the bracket. Very solid looking robot, but Power Surge started this fight not looking so solid. Started off the fight with drive issues and ended the fight with even more drive issues. You're going to have drive issues when you only have one wheel left on your robot. Brutal KO for Caldera and an easy KO at that. But then it was on to a much harder to fight robot, Polywog. As we mentioned earlier, Polywog did lose this fight. Two robots with great WPI connections here. Rivals in the past. Both these robots just brought everything at one another. And it was a dead heap, which both saw we saw both these robots' weapons die in the final minute of the fight. As I mentioned, it was a very, very, very close judge's decision, and one which went to Caldera, getting closer to the finals as it then moved on from the drum bots to take on a different teammate in Kickstart, a robot which has already qualified for the finals like we mentioned earlier on the stream. This was back and forth brutality by both ends, but hey, veteran skills come on top in this one. Glenn Boxall once again picks up the victory as the horizontal spinning mainstay then moved on to the semifinals, qualifying for the November finals in the process. So now a November qualifier, Caldera now faced another newfound qualifier and another worthy veteran in the long forked vertical spinner fully defined. This was another back and forth battle late into the tournament between regulars. And a bit of a familiar spot for both sides, as once again the orange horizontal spinner with the perky minibot would hold strong, surviving, making it horizontal spinner on horizontal spinner for our finals. The first finals we're talking about here in the 3-pound class, Droopy versus Caldera. East Coast versus West Coast. Tommy Wong versus Glenn Boxall. Two longtime competitors at NHRL, one with two wheels, one with two spinners. This event was a celebration of horizontal spinner robots, like I mentioned at the top of the stream, and this was no exception. Another exceptional match for Caldera and the moving arena hazard Droopy. For this being Droopy's first NHRL event in 3 years. That is right, 3 years, almost a whole pandemic's worth of time. It just didn't lose any steps inside the house of Havoc, not one bit. This was a fantastic fight. Chaos all over the arena, but the Droopy momentum would not change here at all. Droopy's weapons seemed like they were too high for Caldera at first, and it seemed like this may be Caldera's fight fairly easily. It gave Caldera an early lead, but once Droopy got flipped over, the massive hits just started raining into both Caldera and the Minibot, both getting spiked violently into the arena wall. Numerous wall shots and even more damaging shots visibly to both of these robots. This one will go to the judges, but unlike some of these split decisions in the past, nothing but unanimous here. It will be a unanimous judges decision for Droopy, as Tommy Wong takes the golden dumpster, qualifies for the finals along the likes of Caldera, Fully Defied, and Synthesis. Some good qualifiers to join the mix here. I hope Droopy goes all the way and takes the big dumpster at the end of the year, makes away with a buttload of cash. Wouldn't that be great? Before we move on to the 12-pound class, going to take a breather here. We have by the looks of it. About 8 robots to talk about here in the 12-pound class, starting with Blue Cheese. A lot of Team Defective members to go over here. So we will be right back. Whew. 16-8 Rangers in the bottom of the ninth. I don't even think we can blow that one. But then again, it's the Rangers. So I don't know. Maybe we can. Hopefully when I finish this live stream, I'm looking at a Rangers win. But y'all don't want to hear about that. You want to hear about some robots. Let's talk about the 12-pound class here as I pull up the bracket here swiftly for you guys. I hope you guys are all doing good on this afternoon/evening, depending on where you are. It is 6:12 here in Texas. My beard is looking very frazzly. Because I had to work so early, I did not take a shower yet. Took a shower late last night, so I wasn't stinky, but I was feeling a little bit unrefreshed in the morning. I probably could use one now, that's for damn sure. I'm trying to keep it lightweight. I got a light shirt on, got the light hat. You know how it goes. What are we talking about here in this 12-pound class? We got the bracket up right here for you guys. Oh, we got somebody here in the chat. Eruption Builder announced NHRL Discord. This would be the last tournament it would be ran. Very intriguing that they would do it in an event where it pulled out in the middle of it all. I wonder what the rationale behind that is. I guess they're just trying to get away from the vert meta, maybe? I don't know. It's a little bit bizarre. But, hey, Electric, I'm glad that you're hanging out with us today. It is awesome to see you hanging out with us in TCC, talking about NHRL. As we move over to the 12-pound notables, and as I mentioned, we got a lot of Team Defective to talk about here, just like we did during the Motorama video. And we kick off here with my favorite Team Defective robot, Blue Cheese. And Blue Cheese has been a bit of a laughing piece in NHRL. I hate to say it. It has a tendency to get obliterated at NHRL events. And NHRL has a tendency to miss every major hit which happens to this robot. It's a little funny. I don't know how. Apparently it did pretty solid in the on-air qualifying of fights despite busting one of its weapons. But as soon as this robot hit the silver screen versus Buzzkill, Blue Cheese became Blue Cheese again. Within 1 minute of their first stream fight, their weapon was broken in two, and the robot died soon after, and then lost to Cthulhu in less dramatic fashion, using a very unique drum that I'd never seen before. I kind of dig the blue tassel-y drum. Don't know too much about the science behind it, but it was very nice looking. Not the best performance for Blue Cheese, but an alright performance compared to some of their infamous outings in the past. Let's talk about a robot, though, which did do pretty good today. Carmen, a robot which we last saw place fourth at Motorama, like I mentioned back in February. This is a former NHRL event winner, a very balanced, very powerful robot with a beautiful livery, probably one of the best-looking machines in Team Defective. They kicked off their run versus Zoe Lambert's Aerostar and took out Zoe Lambert's Minibot and then took out Aerostar right after ripping off its right wheel in only one hit and then breaking the wheel guard off right after that. Usually it's the other way around, but Carmen likes doing things just a little bit different. You gotta respect it. Moving on to the round of 16, though, for Carmen, and it took on another Team Honeycrack Drumbot and Swagmore. And needless to say, this was a sticky situation. Dominant performance by Carmen, but both robots got seriously stuck on the foam goo remnants, which were left by Smeezes and Sombra. We'll get to that fight later on in the stream. Swagmore struggled a bit more than our winner here, but as Carmen moved on via KO, both robots did struggle, though, in that corner. It was a little bit funny. In the top 8 with a spot on the finals in November on the line. It took on another event regular in Sombra, USA versus Brazil here. And Sombra, the 12-pound version of Sombra was the best performing of the trio, but it still failed to get into November, sadly. Carmen would qualify for the November finals after a dominant performance against the Brazilian robot. And then in its semifinal fight versus Maximizer, turns out Maximizer might just be like Nightcrawler in the fact that it's a little bit of a Team Defective kryptonite. Carmen got one solid strike, but aside from this, This fight was all Maximizer. He used its unique design to perfection for a knockout after it looked like Carmen may have gotten caught on an arena belt which was stuck on the floor. It was another impressive top 4 finish for Carmen, but that seems to be their ceiling this year. They fall just short once again, but at least they qualify for the November finals. A little bit luckier than Carmen was Crunk, another one of these team defective signature verts, which we really haven't seen much this year despite plenty of success in 2022. This robot was put to the test immediately versus British drum bot Semtex in its first aired fight, and it made the British favorite look like any other jobber bot in this event. A bit like Carmen versus Sombra, the international star was just torn apart here. This was quick and one-sided, tap out in under 30 seconds, which moved Crunk on to the round of 16, where it took on another drum bot from the Casey Jermiasin combo of what I believe it's called Iteration, is what the robot was named. This was your classic drum on vert fight, with Crunk's lasting about a minute longer than Iterations did, but the drum bot would eventually slow down and tap out, moving Crunk on to the finals qualifier in the round of 8. And this finals qualifier was versus the University of Cincinnati's Cthulhu, a robot which we've discussed not too much on this stream, but we will be discussing a little bit as we move on. Cthulhu dominated the opening minute, and even after losing its weapon only 30 seconds into the fight, Cthulhu dominated the opening minute, but did lose its weapon 30 seconds into the fight. But then in the following minutes, Crunk really loaded in the strikes, the aggression, the control, and managed to bring it back via judge's decision in those final 2 minutes, qualifying itself for the finals. Had a decent semifinals versus, who was it again? My apologies, trying to keep up with everything. Oh yes, it was versus Voxel. That's why I don't have anything written for their finals. And talking about Voxel, okay performance here for it. They also qualify for the November finals. You know, we've seen so many Brazilian teams, you know, kind of do what Sombra has with AGVS, duplicate that style between every single class. And that's kind of what Voxel's doing here. We've seen the 3-pound Voxel do great in the past. 12-pound Voxel debuted last month. Did okay, could have been better, had them to win the 12-pound class. Of course they didn't. How'd they do this time? Well, a little bit better, of course. As I mentioned, they did qualify for the November finals. And in their first fight versus Sombra 12-pounder, talking about that robot, wasn't much of a fight. Both robots had some offense, but Voxel would come out on top after a late tap out by the Brazilians, so that shut down Sombra. And from Brazil to Puerto Rico, Voxel went, took out Arsenal in the aforementioned round of 16 fight. A dominant performance here. Both these robots got stuck at the wall at one point, but Arsenal would be the only one stuck twice. And this allowed Voxel to go into the round of 8, sent Arsenal home. And from here, it knocked out Aerostar in an impressive performance. Had a double check because apparently I forgot to write anything down for that fight. And then, as we mentioned, Voxel would be forfeited against the teammate robot Crunk. Didn't really matter. Both those robots went through to the finals anyway, so they were content with that. We got robots like Crunk, though, Maximizer, Minimizer. Well, who potentially stopped these robots? Well, let's go to the University of Cincinnati. Teammate of Cthulhu here. These guys brought a bunch of 12-pound robots to the field this year. In fact, they all had a rumble at the end of the event. That was a lot of fun. Coming from the University of Cincinnati, a favorite of mine, Maximizer, one of the most creative horizontal spinner robots in the field with their Thagomizer style design. Fantastic captain behind the wheel. And they seemingly ditched a mini-bot, which they've had in the past, in exchange for added armor around the weapon. That's what the team said, at least. And as I mentioned, talked a lot about Cthulhu already in this stream. Their first fight was against aforementioned college teammate Cthulhu. It looked like it was losing in the opening minutes, but after a clutch strike which ripped one half of the wheels off of Cthulhu, this became a win for Maximizer and the momentum they needed, as despite breaking their robot, they would move on to the round of 16 where they fought Rosie, a robot from Northeastern University. And this robot was not cleaning, not doing any chores, nothing that the Jetsons would love. And it certainly wasn't spinning its weapon either. That's the really important thing. This will be an easy win for Maximizer, who then moved on to the Elite 8. Only one win away from the annual finals, and it was horizontal spinner on horizontal spinner. Only one could be a winner in this finals qualifier, taking on Buzzkill from Team Honeycracked in Maryland. This was a battle of undercutter styles, but the Thagomizer would come out on top in another dominant performance here for Maximizer. Over in just 2 minutes of maximizing and minimizing, a knockout. Robot would be not saved by the buzzer, which we rarely do see. Usually these fights get saved. Not so much. Brett couldn't do much here. And then in its semifinal fight versus Carmen, like we just mentioned a bit ago, one big hit by Carmen. And just like with Yobnal, Maximizer pulls off the big upset here as the Cincinnati robot from Louisville was moving on to the finals. And we'll talk about those finals here in a second, but I got a couple other robots I want to highlight over here. Two robots which come from my buddies from Team Flight Plan and Omega Team. And we start off with Smeezes here. We already talked about Inside Job, so we got to talk about Smeezes. This was the first time this robot fought this year, just like Inside Job. And maybe a little bit of rust on this robot. Smeezes had that signature brush drive, which gives it a little bit of a weight advantage, but also a fun advantage, as we'd see in one of its fights. Not much fun, though, during that first fight versus the British Drumbot Octane. What a beautiful robot this was, too, by the way. I feel like I haven't talked about it enough on this stream. Undercutter quit working pretty fast into the fight, and Half the Drive followed suit quickly after, forcing a tap out in under a minute. Second fight against the 12-pound Sombra was a little bit more of a fun one. Just as brutal, though, I got to admit. Didn't even get out of its corner. Unfortunately, had a foam penguin up front, or I should say a fire extinguisher penguin attached to the front of its robot, which didn't get broken at first. But after Smeezes got knocked out, the team begged Team AGVS to break the penguin, and so they did. Smashed it, and like every fire extinguisher you've seen, foam just all over 1/4 of the arena. Good corner of the arena just covered in foam. Joe Fabiani was nice enough to remove all the foam himself before it expanded too much in the arena. But like I said, it was a bit of a sticky situation. Carmen, what was it against? I just talked about the robot. Swagmal was, they both suffered against it. So that sucked a little bit, but it was a lot of fun. I love Smeezes. I love Joe Fabiani. I love his crusher driver, Brandon Zielinski. And speaking of Brandon Zielinski, let's move over to a robot I was excited for. I was personally cheering for to win the 12-pound class. Unfortunately, it was a pretty tough showing here. Axis of Evil. This was a big robot for Brandon Zielinski. First time he's used a Star Child design robot since Star Child went 0-4 at BattleBots this year. 3-pound Star Child has had a lot of success. It's been at NHRL finals in the past. 30-pound Star Child Starfather had some success at Motorama 2022, but outside of that, it's pretty much done a whole lot of nothing. I hate to admit it. Speaking of a whole lot of nothing, as much as I love the heavyweight Star Child, they are a sponsor here at the Combot Collective. More nothing there. It was a very unfortunate year for the heavyweight Star Child, and they were trying to fix some of the issues from heavyweight Star Child here in his Axis of Evil design. A lot of very unique stuff compared to past Star Children. The nubbed wheels, a massive spinner on the end, a much shorter stick, stabilizers on the side, a wider base of body, smaller wheels in general. All these changes seem very promising, and all of Axis of Evil's fights were very fun with their mini bot named Geneva Suggestion. Very fun mini bot name there. Just didn't get much done. I hate to say it. The first fight had some okay hits, but big teething issues for Axis of Evil. Half the drive was lost within the opening minute versus Honeycracked Drumbot Swagmore. That's the name of the robot, not Swagmole. But after an unstick between the two robots, it was immobile and got countered out. Very unfortunate there, but it did make the bracket and had a little bit of an easier opportunity versus Demogorgon, who had shown up with no weapon power after getting obliterated by Blue Cheese in the qualifiers. Not the most thrilling fight, but one which Axis of Evil should have won, could have won, probably needed to have won. But apparently Demogorgon won this. No, I'm not as upset as some of the lockout fumbles I've seen at Robo Brawl and Motorama. But I'm really not sure how a weaponless robot beat the weapon robot. Even commentary was befuddled. Tough year for the Star Child line. I really hope Brandon Zielinski gets it figured out. But we already talked about Team Defective and Crunk. We already talked about the University Cincinnati and Maximizer. How did the 12-pound final go? Well, And like I mentioned, with Maximizer's history with Team Defective, it has knocked out Yobnal in the past. We just saw it knock out Carmen. And then we see them take out Crunk in even more convincing fashion than they did with Carmen. It was a tap out in under a minute, and one of my favorite designs in the entire sport. Maximizer with the Thagomizer stylus tail brings it home, and the University of Cincinnati could have not been more excited. There were signs everywhere, students cheering, people were stoked. They take home the grand prize, they take home the golden dumpster, and we're going to see more maximizing in the finals in November. I loved watching Minimizer fight last year. It was such a fun design. Maximizer was just even better with the black and white livery. I want to see this robot do more. I am so proud of that team. Amazing design. I want to see a heavyweight Maximizer. That's what I fucking want. That thing is sick. But we got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Not really many robots to talk about here in the 30-pound class. So we're getting close to wrapping up this brisk but fun live stream. I hope you guys have been enjoying yourself as we've been talking about NHRL robots and how they did this event. I'm going to take another quick pause, see how the Rangers did, and give me a drink, to be honest, because I'm sounding a little bit hoarse. Yeah, Rangers win, baby. That's what we like to see. That makes me happy. All right, I'll be right back. Fuck you, Angels. That's what we like. Woo-hoo. All right. Home stretch, guys. Oh, no. You don't need to see that score. I mean, it's a good score, but you don't need to see it. Pulling up the 30-pound bracket real quick. And let's talk about the 30-pound bracket. Like I mentioned, smaller bracket, so I don't have too many robots that I wanted to highlight here. But we do have some. And we start off here with Northeastern University. I've been calling them Northwestern University, and I am so sorry about that. George, who, just like Deathpack and James, is one of that school's chunky four-wheel drive vertical spinners, which compete in the 30-pound class. We saw it just over a month ago at Robo Brawl in Illinois. Had minimal success, I got to admit. Wasn't George's best performance. Not the most royalty here. And its first fight was no joke either. They jumped right into the deep end versus the already qualified Kablooey Tango. And we're going to be bringing that full center when we get to the end of the stream. And hey, Kablooey was one word for this performance. This robot got picked apart bit by bit. Ricky Williams put a best here. We were halfway through an autopsy. This was brutal. Large chunks of George got ripped off, and the fight ended with a whole ass battery hanging out of George's front. Not the best look for it. And in case that wasn't bad enough, it then had to face Kitchen Grill, heavyweight turned 30 pounds, and this was short and not so sweet for George, maybe even worse than the last fight. A fast KO, and George spent most of this fight flat on its face. I mean, Bert, or whatever the big one is called, Fluffy, I think, tried self-riding it, tried giving it a little bit of help, but it was just sluggish and awkward. Wasn't meant to be saved. Another robot, which I was really hoping to see do some stuff this time around, but just didn't, was Fracas. This robot got pretty much damaged out of the tournament very early, thanks to old little Ripperoni. It is a control bot by Bone Dead Robotics. We saw it have a poor sportsman outing at Motorama. Then it had a very, very good outing at NHRL March, where it forfeited against Phenomenon because Bone Dead Robotics pretty much had no choice. They had to pick one of the robots to make it into the finals, and that was the one they picked. So that's what we got out of them. They were hoping that maybe this time would be a little bit more different. No, they got that weapon bent completely out of shape against Lil Rip in their first fight. It was bad. It didn't look good, and they pretty much had to forfeit out of qualifiers without even touching the bracket. So that was very unfortunate for Fracas. And speaking of the robot which forfeited it out of the competition, Lil Rip, former NHRL finalist and the original version of Ripperoni. We saw it last fight at Motorama. It placed 6th. I know I said on Robot Combat Tonight the other day that this was Lil Rip's 2023 debut. Far from the truth. Big thing to talk about here at this event, though. No Frederick Moore at this event, the signature driver for Ripperoni. Instead, the captain of Ripperoni, Anna Zolnikov, had to drive on her own for this one. Only real change to the robot from when we last saw it was the fact that he zip-tied a little self-riding ring to the robot. Didn't really work too well. They struggled big time in that aforementioned Fracas fight at first, mainly because of that self-riding ring getting in the way. But after those 3 brutal shots, which retired Fracas from the competition, they managed to take a win, but things would not get much easier in the boss qualifier, where Lil Rip was next set up to face WPI's undercutter Waddles. This was Waddles' first on-stream fight, and it looked great here. The less stable Lil Rip got torn apart by this robot. The wheels got ripped up. The pizza box got ripped apart. Oh my god, I mean, this might be the hit of the event right here, talking about this one. The hit, one of the big, just amazing. Just amazing. That's all I'm going to say here. A coup de grace hit by Waddles. Literally ripped off an entire third of Ripperoni in the end of the fight. Caused the team to tap out. Talk about taking a slice of pizza. Oh my goodness. That was insane. But Ripperoni did make it safely into the round of 16 despite that embarrassing loss. And in their first fight, they had to take on, essentially, we had a Battle of Bots playoff preview, I guess you could say. They both made the playoffs. One of them was out of the playoffs. But Thumb War versus Ripperoni. This was a fun one. One of my favorite fights of the entire event. Thumb War had to enter the battle box. I'm sorry. What am I reading here? It was a beating. Let's just say it like that. It was a beating. Getting stumbled over my words here. I apologize. Very one-sided. Thumb War really just couldn't get that weapon spinning. Highlight hit of the fight was Ripperoni wall-shotting Bloodsport brutally into the Lexon. Shades of Bloodsport versus Black Dragon in 2019. Thumb War had a very unique garbage disposal-esque arm system on the sides of it, I guess you could call it. I don't know, whatever you want to call it. It was what they were trying as a Shremek, because this is sort of... Thumb War is built to be an experimental setup for Bloodsport, so the team can try out new things for the heavyweight. I think that made sense. Really didn't work out here. Instead, what happened was during this big hit, Ripperoni rocked Bloodsport, threw it onto the side. Uh-oh. Okay. Thank you, Matt Landry. That makes a lot more sense. Hotshot could not compete due to the fire marshal saying all fire bots were not allowed. Milk Tank Hat reworked into a car wash vert because of it. I was wondering where Milk Tank Hat was during this event. Well, thank you, Matt. Ah, man, it's just been a tough month for fire marshals and robot combat. RoboGames had the fire marshal shut down their flamethrowers. Now fire marshal's shutting down the NHRL flamethrowers. That explains why we didn't see any Dutch Oven either, because that's another robot I was very excited to see. That's a bit of a bummer. But let's go ahead and not get too off topic. This fight against Ripperoni, it was great. The big hit where Thumb War bounced off the wall, it got caught on its side, pretty much perfectly lodged where... I wish I had like a horizontal spinner to like demonstrate it, because this is very hard to explain. This blade's caught right here. The Streamback's caught right here, and it was like a tripod, just sitting on its side, teed up for another brutal hit for Ripperoni, who eventually knocked the robot out. And this moved Ripperoni on to the round of 8, a qualifier matchup where it took on Shibata, Ratto, Borashudo, Robo-Rat. I love this guy. And this was a shocking upset. Shibata dominated this fight. It wasn't even really close. Ripperoni got its ass beat. It wasn't as brutal as the Waddles fight, but Ripperoni just struggles against these horizontal spinners. I mean, obviously, they are a bit more of a glass cannon than the heavyweight Ripperoni. They don't have the internal flywheel for obvious reasons. You can only have so much weight in a 30-pound robot without sacrificing the big fuck-off blade, but it is a little bit unfortunate. Ripperoni fell out of the top 8, but... they still qualified for the November finals because they were the best performing robot in the top 8. Kablooey Tango took one of those 4 spots already, so they had to find someone for it. Moving on forward here, let's talk about Kitchen Grill, Ireland's first ever NHRL competitor, and this was a fun one to see here. Kitchen Grill is a robot built by the United Kingdom's Team Immersion. Best known for, in my opinion, one of the best 30-pounders in the sport's history, Immersion, a robot which dominated the UK and Chinese scene for a couple years there in 2018, 2019, 2020. This time, though, they brought Kitchen Grill, which is a 30-pound homage to the legendary King of Bots heavyweight combatant, Double Barbecue. By the way, Double Barbecue, we all miss you. Come to BattleBots. I know you're probably trying to and they just reject you, but keep trying. We love you. Took out Northeastern University's Rock Bottom in the first fight with the greatest bees. Very brutal fight. The struggling robot, of course, we saw Rock Bottom compete at Robo Brawl as well. That robot continues to struggle. And in the round of 16, Kitchen Grill faced another Northeastern University robot in George. We talked about that fight already. Another fast and dominant KO. And then it was on to another Northeastern robot in Death Pact, a robot which is already qualified for the finals, and yet another brutal KO here. Did it in the same way they did with George, throwing it face first pretty much. Brutal results there. They pretty much went through the Northeastern University gauntlet, took out 3 solid robots, and made it to the NHRL finals. So we have our first ever European competitor confirmed for the finals. But then it had to take on Waddles in the semifinals. And this was an exciting match, a very exciting match. Big hits from both ends. But unfortunately, Waddles would take the W here. And a big W it was against an international powerhouse like Team Immersion. But I am super excited to see that this team is coming back. Top 4 is nothing to scoff at, even with the field being the smallest field of the 3 classes. Hopefully we can see Team Immersion take their throne back, and maybe we can even see Immersion qualify for the finals next. Question mark, question mark. I'm sure maybe not this year. I'm sure they only had the money for 1 trip, and this was their 1 shot, but still. Wishful thinking is always fun. Let me look around here. What else is there to talk about? I think we only have 1 more robot to discuss here. I'm going to go ahead and skip that one since it didn't do too much. Waddles. Let's talk about Waddles. We already talked about Shibata. We already talked about Kitchen Grill. We already talked about Lil Rip. The other 3 robots which have already qualified for the 30-pound class. But what's going on with Waddles? Well, Waddles, as I mentioned, is WPI's new 30-pound project. Now that STF has already qualified last time we competed. And then, if you've seen it before in the past, it is a 2-wheel drive penguin theme undercutter, which was off to a killer start when it obliterated Ripperoni for its first televised stream fight. It then received a bye to the round of 8, where it only had to win 1 more time to qualify for the NHRL finals, and it did that versus Sombra in dominant fashion. And I mean, Luke Stengel said it best. This was a trouncing as WPI gets their second 30-pound horizontal spinner into the finals. In the semifinals, as I mentioned, Wiles would have an absolute banger versus Kitchen Grill, who lost half of its drive early on, and despite showing some resilience and power it could just not keep up with the hellacious Penguin. The Emperor Penguin and that undercutter just kept on ripping away, and Kitchen Grill had to tap out with under a minute to go. A lot of damage loaded on. Thankfully, they didn't have to repair for a loser's bracket. I will say this one thing. I'm not a fan of NHRL's new bracket. I get why they have to do it with so many robots signing up, but you can't deny that these single bracket fights late in the tournament aren't exciting. You know someone's going to win, and someone that probably doesn't deserve to go home will go home. It's always spicy and it's always fun. But let's talk about our final here. Of course, Droopy 3-pound winner, Maximizer, the 12-pound winner. Who joins our horizontal spinner final here? It was Undercutter versus Undercutter here. It was Waddles and Team Valkyrie's Kablooey Tango, a robot which I some reason didn't write down as a robot to take notes for. I'm shocked I didn't. But we've talked about this robot a lot already in the past. If you don't know, it's a four-wheel drive undercutter, which is a bit of a hybrid of Valkyrie and Ribot. It's a little bit of a collaboratory machine from both Team WPI and Team Questionable Designs. It's a very solid robot. It's a robot which has already qualified for the NHRL finals before, and it's a robot which has been taking the reps. It's showed up for January, it showed up for March, and it showed up for May, and they're probably going to keep showing up. They want trophies and they want money, and who can blame them, because they did damn good here. Both these robots just dished it out to kick this fight off, but Waddle's weapon would die first, and they would die early. Waddle still showed plenty of resilience, even without the weapon, but and they even managed to almost knock out Kablooey thanks to their own energy at one point. Was dead in the water, almost got countered out, but did move after getting shoved by Brett the Brick. We'd see the baby Valkyrie continue to rip away at Waddles, though, all the way going down to that final minute. We'd see a belt get taken out, some really decent chunks of armor get taken out of Waddles here. And this will be a judge's decision. And an easy one for that, as Kablooey Tango, third time's the charm for them. They take the championship here at NHRL May. And, you know, it's been a very tough year for Questionable Designs this year. They had a 3-pounder in this event that got torn apart. They have obviously not done the best at BattleBots this year. Hasn't been the best year for Questionable Designs, but they did win here. A little bit of help thanks to Team WPI, of course, but they did win here. Kablooey Tango, Bango, Bango. The Fox takes it here. Second Fox team that we're talking about being a champion robot here. Of course, talking about the Fox as well. We had a Design Print Destroy event in Robo Brawl, but I digress. Congratulations to Kablooey Tangle. And before we go ahead and get out of here, guys, because this already has been a little bit of a stream, let's go over our qualifiers one more time as we go ahead and pull up the robots that were already qualifiers before this event happened. Of course, we already had Puka, Kickstart, who we saw fight, Wicked Twister, Offbeat, March Champion, Chubby Unicorn, Voxel version 1, who did okay at this event, Beetlejuice, who also did okay at this event, and Clyde, who skipped this event. 12-pound class, Torrential and Torrent, the sibling robots, Hooligan from Florida, the horizontal spinner Yushimi, who now has a little bit of company joining it in the horizontal spinner world, Psycho from Jameson Go, Promheda from Team Defective, Full Court from Team Madcatter, Blackjack from Andrew Davis. Check out hopefully some of his stuff on Robots Ruin My Life fairly soon. In the 30-pound class, EVA from YO Robotics, Squire, the Mini Dragon Slayer, Kablooey Tango, our NHRL 30-pound March champion, Death Pact, a victim of Kitchen Grill, Megatron, Phenomenon, STF and Anxiety from the March event. Of course, Megatron won that. Who's joining him? Well, joining the likes of Puka and Chubby Unicorn is our 3-pound winner after not appearing for 3 years, Droopy. Alongside with them, Caldera, Fully Defined, Synthesis. Great showing for the veterans. Great showing for the rookie in Synthesis. Good stuff here. In the 12-pound class, we saw 3 Team Defective robots qualify for the finals. That's not the most exciting thing. Nothing against Team Defective, but I was hoping to see a little bit more variety for 12-pound qualifyees, but all these robots were going to qualify inevitably anyway, so let's just get them out of the way. Crunk, Carmen, Voxel, 4-wheel drive, big spinner on the front. It's a tried and proven formula. The story here, though, is Maximizer. University of Cincinnati getting a robot into the finals. Captain's family was watching the Kentucky Derby on one screen, NHRL on the other. They had to be pretty happy. At least one of their horses took home the gold. Very excited for them. And in the 30-pound class, who we just talked about, Waddles did really good for WPI. They got their second horizontal spinner into the featherweight class. The story of the event, Chibata, Chibata, Robo, Rato, Rato, Rato. We love this robot. It looks great. Horizontal spinner, powerful. Can't wait to see it fight the world's best. The only Brazilian robot to qualify for the finals. And if what we heard from AGVS is right, maybe Riobots or Warrior will appear at one of these events before it's all said and done. It looks like AGVS might not be at the finals. It's just going to be Shibata. We'll see. I guess we'll just have to see. We have a little bit of international representation, though, from Ireland Kitchen Grill, Team Immersion. I want to see Immersion be in NHRL finals. I feel like that robot deserves that clout. And then we got Lil Rip appearing for its second straight NHRL finals. The acclaim, the honors that this robot has accumulated in its slightly over a year of existing, decent performances at Motorama, made the playoffs at BattleBots in his first try, likely will be Rookie of the Year. Now a couple of NHRL finals appearances. Got to give it to Anazolnikov's new robot. But we're going to go ahead and get ahead and, let's look at my predictions to see who won. I was close, kind of, with Carmen. Krunk made it to the finals. Not the most exciting picks to win. I'm glad the robots who won did win. I did shout out Krunk and Maximizer. I called the finalists, sort of. Didn't really do as much here. Though I did call two of their finalists. Two of the qualified finalists. So I guess I got that going for me. 3-pound class, Eruption. Apparently retiring. That's a big development. A Loco, Crash Fest. We really didn't get to see too much of Crash Fest. Cemetery Drive, by the way, new sibling of Crash Fest. We got to see at this event. Crash Fest, but cooler looking, according to Robert Runn. And of course, Helicobopter Chopper, who I now see I misspelled on this thing. It's all good. Rank number 374. I doubt they're going to move up too much. In fact, I bet all these robots move down the rankings quite a bit, given the results of this event. Let's go ahead and cut back to me. One little tidbit of news that I want to reveal to you guys, anyone that might be watching this. I think we're going to do a TCC news post about it later on in the week on social media. I don't know too much about which teams are going to be there, but from what I heard, they had a representative from Team Prix out of India at NHRL just to be a spectator, hang out in the pits. They hung out with Ripperoni and a couple other teams. According to one of the members from Team Prix, 3 Indian teams are going to be showing up to NHRL in September. This is exciting. I am excited. The Indian contingent, I was excited to see them at Robo Games. They dealt with last-minute visa issues. Well, I hope they get their visa worked out now because they said during that final push in September, they're showing up. They're bringing their silver verts that kick a lot of ass. Who knows what we're going to see? Team Xenon, Blanca Bots, Team Prix. There's a lot of really good teams in India, and I'm missing a few just by bringing those up, and I know I am. But there's some highlight teams in that nation, and I would love to see them compete, make it into the finals, show off a little bit more international flair. That September event's going to be real crunch time for a lot of teams, so it's going to be tough. But I am super stoked to see the Indian contingent hopefully show up in September. You know how the sport is, very subject to change, so don't take it with a grain of salt. But it is some pretty exciting news. That being said, I am going to get out of here, guys. It was a fun live stream. I'm sorry it was a little bit later than I initially intended. Things happen. I can't just call into work because I love live streaming. It was a fun event, though. It was a very fun NHRL event. The horizontal spinners came out on top. A new star was born with Robo Rat coming out of Brazil. The dude's name is... Oh, by the way, I got to bring this up. I knew about Robo Rat before this event because he hosts the web series in Brazil. He appears a lot in Brazilian media. I thought the rat thing was a secret identity. I really did. I thought the rat mask and the shades was like a thing to keep him low key. And I was like, cool, we don't really have a luchador kind of character in Robot Combat. Someone that keeps his identity low key. And then he just said, oh no, my name is Douglas, and took off the fucking mask. And it was like, oh, I don't know how I feel about this. I liked him better as that's rude to say. He was more unique as a rat. Now he's just some guy named Douglas. I'm still going to call him Robo Rat, Rato Borashudo. Whatever you want to call him, you can call him an NHRL finalist for November. Super excited about that. Thank you guys so much for watching this live stream. I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. I want to take a shower really bad. This was a lot of fun. Very solid show. Can't wait for the one in June. You know, we're going to be back here for that one. I'm very excited for it. It's an exciting year for Robot Combat today. It's an exciting weekend for Robot Combat. You know, we have the events happening in Seattle. RoboGames video will be out hopefully before the end of the month. Proving Ground update video will hopefully be out within the week. Robot Combat Tonight will be out soon. I'm going to start editing it pretty soon after I get this video out on live. Maybe I'll do highlights of this video. I recorded it just to be safe, but we'll see how I'm feeling and what the timing sets me up for. But guys, especially Matt and Electric, who said some stuff in chat, hung out for a bit. Thank you guys so much for watching this stream, as turbulent as it was getting a start time for it. Here we are. Thank you all so much. This is the Combot Collective. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Join the Discord server and subscribe to the channel. We'll see you guys next time. Thank you, Electric. Love you, my friend. See you, man. Thank you for tuning into the stream. Godspeed. You're awesome. Love the profile picture. We'll see you soon.